All right, so first up, we're going to hear from Jean Herman of the Membership Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. This will be a pretty short update. Go to the next slide. This is just a quick list of the co-chairs of the Membership Committee. A reminder that the Membership Committee is one of the operational committees for FDP. So this is going to be all about how we keep FDP moving along as an organization. One of the things that we're looking at is modernizing the membership database. That project has a working group that's installed, I guess is the best word, liaised with the infrastructure group. The specifications for that database are being worked out, not just through infrastructure, but also through the Communications Committee. One of the things that we want to do is get our Fdp profiles updated and then also extended just a little to include your skills and experiences. The reason for doing this is that we'll be able to use those skills and experiences when we're looking for members of working groups or committees. So the working group leaders and the committee co-chairs will be able to search the database and look for folks that can help volunteer their time and skills with FDP. There'll be profiles for everyone who's registered for a meeting. So even if you're not a member of FDP, you will still have a profile and you can make updates to that profile, but you won't be able to participate in committee work. And again, just a quick plea, this is for us asking to help get that data accurate as we get ready to migrate to a new platform and also to use as we contact people for committee work. Next slide. When you log in, so this will be the last slide I have. The rest of the slides are really just a quick screenshots, sorry, for how you'll go about updating your profile. But when you log in, you'll be able to update your name if you had any spelling changes or if we have typos in your name, your position title, your institution, and this is particularly important for those of us who have changed institutions recently, your email address, and then of course, as I mentioned before, your experience and skills. If you have any questions about the profile fields as they exist now, or suggestions about how to change them, please send those to membership@thefdp.org. You can see that on your slide. Also, the instructions for how to do this can be found on this link. So they're pretty simple, but if you want a step-by-step walkthrough on how to do it, you can find it on the FDP website. And if you have any trouble getting the profile updated, if anything happens unfortunate, please contact Sarah. You've got her email address on this slide as well. Next slide. So the first thing that we'll do is walk through the process. This is a screenshot that you'll see of the FDP homepage. And the two pieces I want you to note are the login that's in the upper right-hand corner and search people that's in the middle, that's underneath the directory. When you click directory, you'll be able to search people or search institutions. Next slide. When you click login, you'll need to use your email address and your password. If you don't remember the email address, you can find out what it is for yourself just by searching your name. So you would go to the directory, choose search people, put in your last name or your first name. And as you can see here, we've got a picture of David Wright's profile, and you can see what email address was used for his profile. Next slide. If you've forgotten your password or you don't know it, once you have that email address, you click login, you select the forgot my password link, and you'll get the image at the bottom of the screen where you put in that email address that's listed with your profile, hit reset password, and the password reset process will happen through email. You'll get an email with a link to reset your password. Next slide. Once you've got your email address and password, which are pretty easy to do, as you've seen, you don't need to call anyone to find out what those are. You can do it all yourself. You'll log in and you'll get this menu. At the first, everyone will see a slightly different menu, but we all have as the first bullet item under the listing, edit profile. So you'll click Edit Profile, and next slide. This is the profile information. I've cut part of it out. The top part you can see, it's quite small, but those are just demographic pieces. It's got your name, a salutation, what is your academic degree, your title, your institution. All those pieces of information you can now update directly in the profile yourself. The second part of the screen that you're seeing is kind of in the middle. It shows experience and skills. And we haven't listed all of them because there's a lot. But what you'll do there is go and check each box that represents experiences you have or skills you have. When you make the selection, it'll turn yellow, as you can see on a couple of these. And if you've chosen something that oh, I wish I hadn't done that, just click it again and it'll go gray. When you're completely done adjusting any of the fields you need, your name, the phone number, mailing addresses, and your experience and skills, click Update Profile. And at that point, all of the information that you've entered will be saved. And that's it. Super simple, but we really encourage you to go out there, update your FDP profile. You can even do it while you're, probably could have done it while you were listening to me, but you can do it while you're listening to other webinars that the recordings from the sessions in this meeting that we'll have on the website soon. And with that, David, I'll send it back to you unless we have questions.
So, yeah, there was one question. It actually was dealing with my leaving. It says, speaking of operations, it was mentioned in other sessions that David Wright was leaving. Is there a transition plan? Yes, I am leaving. I will be in the position through the end of February, and Alex and Michelle and several others are going to be deeply involved in making sure nothing falls through the cracks. So we're working on the plan as we speak. So with that, I want to turn it over to Stephanie Scott for an update from the Communications Committee.
Thank you, David. And it's been a pleasure working with you all these years. I'm really sad to see you go. So hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Scott. I am the chair of the Fdp Communications Committee, and I'm going to give a very short update. So next slide, please. Okay, like the membership committee, we are also an operational committee to the FDP. We report directly to the executive committee. And I just wanted to show you all the things that the communications committee is responsible for. We develop and maintain an overall communication and outreach plan for the FDP. And in a couple of slides, I'm going to be talking about some exciting things that we're currently working on with regards to strategic communications planning. We set style guidance for all FDP committees and whether that's FDP publications in either electronic or print form. So our committee reviews anything before it is sent to the public at large. We provide oversight and direction for content managers of the FDP website. So basically, each committee and subcommittee is responsible for updating the content of their website. And so we provide oversight and guidance on what content they should be including on the website for public viewing. We edit and approve publications that have broad viewership. We review materials upon request. We are also known for and compile and disseminate high-level meeting summaries. And so after every FDP meeting 3 times a year, we have a very dedicated working group of note takers that take notes of all of these sessions, and we publish a summary document for you to use to take back to your organizations, to take back to leadership, or just to browse through and get the highlights of every session that took place. In fact, this week, we've already written several summaries and have sent them back to the presenters to get final approval on them. And so they are working very furiously to get that out very quickly. And we develop other outreach materials upon request. Next slide. And so I just wanted to talk for a second about how our committee is structured. We currently have, I would say, 4 main working groups of operational activities. We have the session summaries group, which I just talked about, led by Jeff Petsis, Annie Pablau, and Julie Renkes. We have marketing. And so the marketing work group develops brochures, other materials, that's led by Barb Gardner and Sarah White. We have a policies and style guidance working group led by Sheila Chaplar and Talise Daly. And we have our website working group led by Rasha Abed and Jamie Sprague. But we also have, besides these main working groups, we have liaisons. And so we have our faculty liaison, Judge Utz from University of Cincinnati. Jean mentioned earlier about a project management and resources resources tools. Actually, it was this internal systems working group she mentioned earlier. I'm getting them mixed up, but we need liaisons in our committee. And so we have Maura Harris representing a communications liaison with the infrastructure working group on project management tools. And so the purpose of that working group is to develop project management resources for the FDP committees to utilize. So for example, Thought Exchange, which was used throughout the FDP meeting this week. And what Jean did mention earlier in her presentation is that there are a lot of systems, for example, the membership database that are being modernized. And so we have a liaison to communications when it comes to internal systems and that modernization working group. And that liaison is Aubrey Schoenleblin. And I'm sorry if I butchered your name. And then finally, what's currently happening right now is we are working on a communication strategic plan. And so I'm working with Jennifer Taylor on leading the efforts with that. And one other thing that the communications committee does is that we coordinate and sometimes write articles for Incura magazine. So we have a standing column of the FDP update in Incura magazine, and our column is published 3 times a year. Next slide. And so I just wanted to show a screenshot. This is the session summaries document that we publish, the quick meeting summary that goes out after every meeting. We're determined to send it out as soon as possible, as soon as we can, and they're furiously working on this right now. We have 20 dedicated volunteers. And next slide. And very recently, our marketing working group worked on a new interactive brochure, which we have published on our website. There's the link. It's on the operations information page in the communications section. And so if you needed a high level brochure to communicate with somebody what the FDP is all about, this is a great document that can be distributed within your organization or to leadership to talk about some of our accomplishments and at a very high level, what we're all about. So next slide. Okay, so I talked about strategic planning. So as we went into phase 7, as most of our members may be aware, we had a phase 7 strategic plan. And as part of the strategic plan, one of the overarching goals for the FDP is to tell a powerful FDP story to internal and external audiences. And so with that, next slide, please. We have hired an external firm, Vanguard Communications. They're a marketing and PR firm. And after interviewing, I think about 5 PR firms, we went with Vanguard Communications. They're based in Washington, D.C., and they also have a lot of experience working with nonprofit organizations and federal agencies. So they seem like a perfect fit for the FDP to help us with this communication strategic plan. And so what is the purpose of a communication strategic plan? Well, really, what we want to do is help our audiences understand the impact of the FDP, increase awareness of our FDP initiatives, establish recognition and credibility. It helps if we have a strong communications and marketing plan, the recognition and the credibility of our organization, highlight the great work and the output that our organization produces, inform our members and other constituencies about our successes. And just, I think it overall, helps people stay engaged and informed of all of our activities. And so task one of the strategic communications plan, that is task one, is to have an overall communication strategic plan. And so Vanguard Communications first met with some senior leadership, and now they are currently doing some stakeholder interviews. And so if you hear from me and Jennifer, you may be contacted, or we may ask for your participation in a one-on-one stakeholder interview. You were probably already contacted. And then two, the second task after we have this plan is that we are going to tackle our website. We're going to modernize it and update the FDP website based on the recommendations coming out of the strategic plan. And so what I wanted to say is a couple of things. One is that if you indicated, whether it was a while ago or whether it was in the fairly recent volunteer engagement survey that was sent out from the FDP, if you were interested in participating in the communications committee, after we go through our strategic plan, I assure you that there will be plenty of opportunity to get involved. And so if you haven't heard from us yet or for a while, I have been maintaining all those names on a special communications listserv to keep you informed of the activities of the strategic plan, and we'll be updating you soon. And when the plan is finalized, we'll certainly let you know when those opportunities come up. And the other thing I just want to say is that this has really been a great meeting this week, because I've heard a lot of different suggestions that I think are related to communications. In particular, how we can better engage our faculty with some of the sessions that may be more administrative focused. And I've been listening to that and taking notes. And I'm going to be taking it back to the committee with some of these great suggestions. And so next slide. All right. So, of course, there'll be more to come. We always welcome your suggestions. And if you'd like to contact me or anyone in communications, reach out to communications@thefdp.org if you have any questions or suggestions for us. And did I get any questions?
No, there's nothing in the Q&A.
All right, so I'll stick around for a little while to see if any questions come up. So
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, so next I want to turn it over to Lori Schultz and David Saunders of the newly renamed Research Systems and Technology Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, David, and welcome everyone to the committee updates today. I'll be presenting with David Saunders, my federal co-chair of who's at the National Science Foundation. My name is Lori Schultz, and I'm at the University of Arizona. And I'm the institutional co-chair of the newly named RSTC, or Research Systems and Technology Committee. And can I get the next slide, please? So you might be thinking, what happened to ERA? And I would like to set the stage a little bit. I had maybe a little more fun than I want to admit to making this slide about what ERA evokes for me. And it really is an image of the 90s, fax machines and piles of paper applications, Netscape browsers and GeoCities websites, running to the airport to deliver that application to the last FedEx departure. At least that used to be what happened on my campus at the time, before we had electronic systems, before we had ways of submitting proposal applications and other research administration transactions via the internet. So a lot has changed since then. Next slide, please. Back when we first had Fastlane, which was in the mid-90s, it was very new to all of us. Those of us who were super experienced in proposal applications, understanding, the page limits and the font sizes and the form types and those NSF 1270 budget pages, we knew we had the subject matter expertise. But all of a sudden, the internet came into play, and it introduced us into a world that we were brand new to. We had never done this before. We had maybe used email, maybe not even for work. But at the time, research administrators needed support in understanding systems and technology and how that was changing their world. But, fast forward almost 30 years, and research administrators don't need that help anymore. Research administrators are fully aware of how these systems works, how the process works in building them, creating them, and using them, how the data flows, how what looked like a paper form translates into the digital world. So they just don't need that same level of support as they did when the ERA committee was first formed in the 90s. Another thing that's changed, especially with phase 7 of the FDP, we have many brand new institutional members to the FDP, and a real need to be able to leverage their expertise, their willingness to volunteer and participate. And we also have a need to take a step back and look at what does the RSTC membership look like, and are we truly representative of the membership of the FDP organization as a broader community as a whole. And so we also, need to acknowledge that research administration is about technology, is about system design. It's about data interoperability, things like Science EV. We've talked a lot about ORCID. We've talked about how data lives in a place and can exist in other places through the use of technology. So what our charge has been has changed a lot over time in talking about system integration, the use of data versus getting an audience of research administrators used to brand new technology. We've completely evolved. Next slide, please. And so in acknowledging that and acknowledging what the ERA group was doing, we realized we needed to do something to have a new strategy to make some changes. So what we did to get there is we worked with a strategy facilitator over some sessions in August and September to really reframe what we're doing, to honor the work that we had done to date and make sure that that remained with us as part of the important history of the ERA committee, but to also let go of what wasn't working for us, to acknowledge, like I said earlier, that research administrators are in a different place than they were in 1995 when it comes to systems. So we should honor that as well and let go of the pieces that overlap with that. We also need to figure out how to reevaluate and reinvigorate our membership with the brand new phase and all of the new members to the FDP organizations. So in those sessions that we had in August and September, the participants, just so you're aware, included all of our standing ERA committee members as they exist today, but we also invited a lot of people who completed the volunteer surveys. And in particular, we wanted to include folks that were new institutional members for phase 7, but also institutions that were a missing piece of our membership. And that includes smaller institutions, PUIs, ERIs, and institutions that are not large R1 research organizations. And with that, I will turn it over to David for the results.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. Next slide. Yeah, so like Lori was saying, we left those sessions with a new name, a new purpose, and a new membership model. And I want to dwell for a minute on the name parts because we put a fair amount of thought into that. And, first of all, it's a mechanism to kind of separate ourselves from an outdated mission, but also to attract people to this new revitalized mission. And, so let me break it down for you. So as you all know, FDP defines the scope as improving the national research enterprise. So our use of the term research there, really connects us to that mission. And second, as Lori mentioned, the world has changed quite a bit since the 1990s, and pretty much now every committee's mission to some extent involves IT. So we really wanted to specialize in the technology aspects of the research enterprise, where we feel like there's missed opportunities to collaborate between member institutions as well as with the federal sponsors. And lastly, we're not, however, about technologies being used in the lab. So the word systems really is connotes or connects us to the business systems that drive the research enterprise, not the infinite variety of tools being used by, biologists, engineers, what have you, in their projects. Yeah, so next slide. So now Lori's going to talk a minute more about more details about the membership, but our overarching vision and goals there were to ensure diversity and have a membership that's continually active and engaged. The membership should draw from the technical talent that we see, talent and expertise as well that we see across FDP institutions and the federal agencies. So our revitalized vision is both technology and solution focused. One example that we show here is, we want to build a library of open source tools to be used by institutions. Another is an analysis tool that can be used to quantify the impact of changes. A third is, published standards and best practices. We see ourselves as partnering with the other committees, bringing those tools and expertise to bring insight into the emerging changes. And we will use our expertise to deploy demonstrations, standards, best practices, et cetera, to benefit all member institutions. And those solutions will reduce administrative burden while enabling better compliance. So that's the results and vision. Let me turn it back over to Lori to talk about membership.
Thanks, David. So, what we decided in these strategy sessions is how do we define membership and how do we make sure that our membership is always invigorated? So what we agreed on was having 15 rotating institutional members and that group would rotate in thirds to preserve knowledge. So, you wouldn't have all 15 people leaving at the same time. It would just be phased in 5, 5, and 5 to make sure that we were preserving historical and committee knowledge over time. The co-chairs, so folks like David and I, would follow FDP guidance for the way co-chair terms works. And that's, 3-year terms with an option to renew. And that federal agencies would always have a seat. So there would be no limit on the number of federal agency member participants to the RSTC. And there's no limit to the number, but also no term length. So they can stay as long as they like because we love our federal agency partners. They're very important to the RSTC mission, of course. And next slide, please. I think this is our last slide. So with the idea with the membership changing, a lot of folks have asked us over time about how do you join this new committee? How do you join ERA? How do you join what is now the RSTC? So with our new membership definition, we have 4 open seats for standing membership on the committee to round out our 15. We will be working on what that 5-5-5 rotation looks like. To date, we have not had, because we had some open seats and one person who left their current position for a position in industry, we actually have kind of an almost natural rotation of 4 seats. So we'll be working on an application review and selection process to evaluate folks who would like to join us on the standing committee. One of the things that I do want to mention here is I said in more than one occasion that the FDP has many new institutional partners, and one of our biggest goals in evaluating what the ERA/RSTC does is how do we make sure that our standing membership reflects the diversity and accurately represents FDP members. So that being said, while we will be looking for applications for new members, we will have a very strong priority for non-Research 1 institutions. I can tell you that our 11 members who exist today are all from R1s. So we are very much looking to make sure that we represent other types of membership of the FDP at large. One of the things that we do want to mention too is that all these ideas that David mentioned for our vision, like having a library of open source tools, having things that are best practices that can be articulated across systems, those can all be working groups. And working group members do not have to be standing members of the committee. That's one of the things that we decided because we wanted to make sure that we could have regular engaged participation of volunteers that didn't have to mean that you must be one of the 15 standing members. So if you have ideas that are other than the ones we talked about, once you get these slides and you have some thoughts, please feel free to send those to us. Because again, you may be interested in one of the open seats for standing membership, but you also might be really wanting to look at something that you could do as a working group, and that's absolutely welcome. And I guess the last thing I have there is, do you have any other thoughts or questions before we turn it over to the next speaker?
Thank you, Lori and David. I don't see anything in the Q&A box at the moment, but you're talking about going back to the 90s. The other morning, Pamela Webb and I were waxing nostalgic about teaching workshops on how to use Netscape.
Nice.
So I remember that back in the day.
And that really is where we started.
Yes, it
David.
is. All right, next up, we have Michelle Masucci filling in for Robert Nobles to talk about our evaluation working group. So I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Thank you so much, David. And it's really great to be with everyone this afternoon. I appreciate that we're at the very end of our last session of the FDP meeting. So I appreciate everyone's attention. Could we have the next slide, please? Thank you. Robert Nobles, who is the head of the evaluation working group, could not be here today. He's actually in transit. And so I offered to share the update that he provided at the faculty committee, or I should say the faculty forum session that was held on Tuesday. So if this is a little bit repetitive, I apologize to those of you who've participated in both groups. I'll try and keep it fresh. I want to acknowledge all of the people who are a part of the working group, just so that you can see there's a very large number of people and quite a lot of faculty members actually who are actually involved in helping think through the evaluation plan. Next slide, please. So there are two components of the evaluation that I want to make you aware of. One is that there is this internal working group. I just identified the individuals who are involved in that. And there will be some activities that the internal working group is going to be doing alongside of the activities of an external evaluation group. The internal group is intending to be involved in some of the routine evaluation tasks that would comprise an evaluation that are baked into our operational activities, like conducting satisfaction and outcome surveys of our membership, and also collecting activities that are being implemented from the operational and program committees on an annual basis. Those are examples of the kinds of pro forma evaluation things that we could be doing as an organization for ourselves. In terms of an external evaluation, we in the phase 7 strategic planning process committed as one of our strategic pillars to investing in an evaluation strategy for the organization and enlisting the support of a true evaluation resource center to help us conduct that evaluation. So the plan for external evaluation is to work with an evaluation center, and you should be thinking about whether you're a member, as a member institution, you have a resource that might be relevant for this, because we will be putting out a call for participation by one of our member institutions to conduct the evaluation. That evaluation plan would help us to do a number of things. One is to really understand better through collecting data about the effectiveness of how we allocate our resources to include, to accomplish the goals that we have at FDP. And of course, we're a volunteer organization, so a really big component of that has to do with the time and effort that all of us put in. We want to do a better job of assessing the value proposition of that time and energy that we put into the goals that we establish. Next slide. Another thing we want an evaluation group to help us do is to document the level of success that we have in accomplishing our vision. A third thing that we would enlist an external group to do is to help us demonstrate the accountability requirements that are required to fulfill the needs of our stakeholders. So it's really trying to very much understand that the various groups that rely on FDP, including our member institutions, including our federal partners, that we have accountability to what they need from us, and that we are collecting the data and information that we need to determine whether we're being accountable so that we can speak to that issue. A fourth thing is that we need to do a better job of aggregating information from each of our programmatic and operational committee evaluations so that we can look at those as a composite look across the FDP as a whole. And that's something we want some guidance from an external group to help us do. A fifth thing is that we're seeking to develop a report process and system on a regular basis that allows us to evaluate what our successes are and what our opportunities are so that we can share them across the organization and with our stakeholders. And so understanding that, an evaluation process is really going to help us see how well are we doing the things that we say we want to do, and what are the things that we can be doing that would help us to improve according to those goals. Next slide, please. The evaluation working group submitted a draft report to the executive committee of the FDP back in November. There have been some comments that have come. We're looking to ratify that plan in the near future. And when it is ratified, these are the things that will be happening just as sort of the next steps in the evaluation process. One is that the evaluation working group will begin to work on this internal, if you will, internal to the organization survey process. They're anticipating beginning that in sort of middle of the spring of this year. A second, again, is to seek nominations and identify external evaluation teams from among our membership so that we can engage with them to help us do the external evaluation process. We're hoping to get the word out about that in the next couple of months so that we can begin identifying that team again by March 2022. A third thing is that we want to share whatever the working group annual surveys show and the external evaluation plan at future FDP meetings so that all of you have an opportunity to give input to whether that plan makes sense and to further comment on the things that you think could be added to that process. To give you an idea of some of the questions, let's go to the next slide. These are some of the key questions that are guiding the evaluation. And for those of you who are familiar with evaluation processes, these play the primary role of shaping that external engagement. So by laying out what questions we want to answer, it helps us to determine what the skill set of an evaluation team is and how they could help design tools and systems that will allow us to answer these questions. So the ones that the evaluation working committee have come up with at the highest level are, what are the specific program improvements that have been implemented after each faculty workload survey? One of the things that we pride ourselves on as an organization is that we implement the faculty workload survey and get this feedback about the effect of regulations on the time that faculty spend on administrative tasks. And as an organization that is keenly focused on reducing that burden, not only reducing the burden for faculty, but also trying to bring efficiencies and qualities on the administrative side of grant implementation so that it isn't just a shift of burden from faculty to administrators, but we actually have a better and higher quality system overall. One of the things we want to do is to make sure that we're always thinking about how the work that we do at FDP is advancing that goal. A second key question is, what is the specific and critical role that FDP plays in government-wide initiatives? What are the outcomes of such initiatives? I think everybody here is keenly aware and supportive of the relationship that we have with our federal partners and this really special role that the FDP plays in being a sounding board and coming up with solutions to help us improve the harmonization of our research enterprise on a national basis. So we want to do a better job of being able to identify what it is the FDP does in very specific terms to help advance that so that we can talk about that and really enumerate our value proposition, as Stephanie was talking about earlier, to tell a powerful story about the FDP. A third key question for the evaluation is to really just have the quantitative information about the number of demonstration projects that we have had, that we are planning to implement or completing, and how that has mapped out in time over the different phases of the FDP. As a maturing organization, we're in phase 7 now. We're starting to get to the point where we need to have the data systems. We can't really rely only on the narrative discussions that we have in the collective memory. We need to start developing the databases that allow us to keep track of this information so that we can chart how the work that we have done has been involved in shaping the enterprise as we understand it at our home institutions and across the landscape of higher ed. Next slide, please. Another key question is just understanding better what are the actual and projected cost savings to institutions and affiliate members that can be attributed to some of these initiatives. So we're seeking, again, from an outside evaluation source, some tools that will help us to better measure that and to identify who the specific beneficiaries of those particular implementations of demonstrations are. Another question is, what is the value of FDP to federal agencies? And really just honing in on that question and making sure that we are always relevant across the entire membership of the FDP. What are the activities that have been implemented by the FDP to increase the value of programs and outcomes to the federal agencies? What else could we be doing? What are the things that may not be working as well as we would like them to? And finally, what are the activities or initiatives that FDP implements that target or assist institutions serving underrepresented groups and young investigators, including investigators that come from underrepresented backgrounds? I think you've heard that as a theme across all of these presentations this afternoon, in having grown the number of institutions that are part of FDP and working in a concerted way to broaden the participation of institutions in the FDP. We want to take another step and go deeper. And that is to really look at diversity, equity, inclusion issues on a more substantive basis and to see how that pulls through, not only in the demonstrations that we do, but also in the impacts that we have. So those are the main questions. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great. There are a couple things I want to also add, and one of them is just to understand that we have a quantitative and a qualitative approach in an evaluation process. Quantitatively, we're really trying to come up with the data points that help us to understand and track better our activities and really develop a system of tracking. On a qualitative side, we really want to make sure that we're engaging with the different constituencies and stakeholders across the FDP to be able to understand what's relevant to them based on their roles and perceptions, based on their institutions' engagement with the FDP, and also focused on the life cycle of grants. And we also want to make sure that we attend to some of this at the committee level and really just make sure that we have a well-functioning organizational structure where our function and our decision-making are all cohesive and coherent, and that we get an outside view on occasion to make sure that all of that is being handled in alignment with the scale, the scope, and the impact that we hope to have for the organization. Last slide, please. I just want to point out one additional thing, that we're not designing all new systems. In some ways, we're building on systems that we already have and really trying to make them more robust and to pull them into the evaluation process. And so we already do, for instance, a faculty workload survey. So we have that information and those outcomes. We're thinking hard about how we might draw from the data that's associated with the faculty workload survey to further sort of dive into what the issues are that we want to look at. We're considering a potential administrative workload survey, which would provide additional data about our member institutions. We have been looking carefully at toolkits that FDP puts together. And by toolkits, I really mean both the tools that we use from outside, like Thought Exchange, as well as the tools and demonstrations that we create that we make available to others, to really have the metrics about how they're used and the ways in which they advance the goal of the organization. And we already do quite a bit of tracking of participation in meetings and the activities that we undertake because of the fantastic work that Jean Herman and the membership committee is involved in. The idea that I think we have here is to utilize that data again to speak to the evaluation questions that we have. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we want to make sure that all of that data from our demonstrations, including the final implementation of solutions that we develop through demonstrations, is documented and that we have good data surrounding it. So with that, I turn it back over to David.
All right, well, thank you, Michelle. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box, so I think you're off the hook there. Next up, we have Miriam Campo and Ron Splitgerber, who are the co-chairs of a working group we've put together called Reimagining Fdp Meetings. So basically, after everything we've learned over the last couple of years about remote meetings and so forth, we knew we kind of had to take a step back and look at how our 3 annual meetings will look going into the future. And so this group is tasked with trying to look at what we've done in the past, what we've done over the last couple of years and how we can kind of mold all of that and make our meetings more functional, more informational, and just kind of move into our next phase of meetings as we move forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron and Miriam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miriam Campo. I am Assistant Vice President at Florida Atlantic University. And first of all, I want to thank everybody. This FDP meeting has been incredible, like all others, but I think we're the last session, the last presentation today. So that's exciting. But everything has been great. So thank you to everyone who's participated in getting this meeting together. So as David mentioned, the Reimagining Fdp meeting came about just to reinvent and see where the membership wants the meeting to go. Can you go to the next slide, please? So one of the first things that Ron and I have done was solicit members. So we want to acknowledge all of our committee members because they are part of getting all of these pieces together that will hopefully help. One of the things we do want to encourage is we are still seeking a faculty member to be part of our team. During the coffee hour session, we did have several faculty members participate, and it was really incredible. We got tremendous feedback. So more than ever, we know that we absolutely need a faculty member to be part or more to be part of this team. So we are encouraging faculty to please let us know if you want to be part of the team, or Michelle to please help us find a faculty member for our team. Next slide. So our working group was established, as David said, to reimagine the FDP meetings. It was established August of 2021. And we've accomplished some things already. Obviously, we got the committee together. We are meeting every 2 weeks so that we can discuss all of these items. We're evaluating what was done in the past. We're evaluating in-person, virtual, or a hybrid, a combination thereof. We've gotten a lot of feedback so far, but there's more information that we need to get. We're looking at cost analysis. And again, we want to engage faculty members on our committee. Next slide. So these are some of the things that we've done so far. I just talked about. Ron is great at, he created Google Drive and Trello we're using to monitor the activities of the committee, and that's been working wonderful. We are preparing a survey that we want to send out to the FDP membership to solicit everyone's input as to the types of meetings. Some of the comments that we have received so far, which was really something that I had not considered. When we had the coffee hour, one of the faculty members mentioned that the September meeting is usually very difficult for faculty to attend because of the start of a new semester. It was just eye-opening for me, right? Because I'm not a faculty member, so obviously that wasn't something that I had considered. So again, reiterating that we really need a faculty member in our committee. But we've been reviewing a lot of articles and documents also to get meeting ideas, seeing what's already been done, what's working, what hasn't worked, and we're just gathering different lists of formats. And we want to, FDP has always been an incredible meeting, and we want to continue that. But as things have changed, we want to make sure that it serves the entire community. Next slide. I think I'm getting ahead of my slides. So like I said, we're trying to finalize a survey to submit to the membership. We will be evaluating the survey results. We're hopefully have them to present at the May meeting, and then submitting recommendations to the program committee prior to the September meeting. Next slide. And Ron is going to take it over from here.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. I did want to take just a second and thank David Wright for his service over the years. I went back and looked at some of the documentation we had from the Incura ERA group after listening to the renaming of the ERA team for the FDP in phase 7. And David, I found a note about your contributions at Emory in Atlanta from 2001. One of the hallmarks of that meeting was that the ERA group wanted to coin the phrase "stop talking and start doing." And so I'm thinking that might be a good acronym for thinking ahead for the phase 7 for the RFM team as well. As Miriam noted, we're looking at all the different formats for the meeting, the virtual, in-person, and hybrid. And one of the considerations that we're looking at as a model is the JAD team. I'm not sure how many folks have heard about that, but that's a group that's worked with grants.gov over the last couple of FDP phases. And it may be a good model for a working group that provides a hybrid venue for folks. That group includes not only FDP members and our federal friends, but it also includes vendors as well. So you have around the table vendors, federal representatives, administrators, faculty members, and technical folks talking about grants.gov. And I think grants.gov uses that as one of their primary outreaches for future plans. So a good model that we might look at in some of the working group forums. Next slide, please. Parallel with the meeting type and locations, as we've talked about, the RFM team has documented some tried and true session types, such as the plenaries, the breakouts, panel discussions, but also looking at others. The coffee hour was one that happened this last meeting. I think that ended up being very effective. We're also looking at others, such as the campfire, birds of a feather, lightning talks, ignite talks, where folks are given just a few minutes to do a presentation and go through slides very quickly, doing pre-recorded sessions so that that content might be shared widely after a meeting, roundtable discussions, and then as we're trying to do here, polling and feedback. So to kind of get that going and give us a precursor for some of the information we'll be asking from folks, what we'd like to do is go through just a quick survey in Zoom. So I'm wondering if we can scroll that up now. Next slide. So if we can start out with the Zoom poll, the first thing we want to find out is that folks that are online and can provide some feedback, what your affiliation is. And again, we're looking at this from the perspective of the three constituents of faculty, administrator, and technical from a university perspective. And these folks will interface with our federal friends long-term. So we'll give everybody a minute to respond to that. And did we want to share results of that one? Okay, so we can quickly see that faculty and technical are about evenly representative, and administrators are most of the folks online. Great, thank you. Next slide. Given our past phases, the cadence has been 3 meetings per year, and considering carbon footprint and other things, such as Miriam mentioned on issues with September being problematic for some of our faculty members. Let's go ahead with the poll and see which one should be in person rather than virtual. And you can check more than one here if you need to. I'll give it just a minute for responses. And as everyone knows, the tradition has been that all three meetings are held in person in DC. And so, you know, one of the considerations we have is in perhaps rotating one of the in-person meetings, perhaps once a year, more often if we hold more than one in-person meeting a year in other geographic areas. So maybe, do we have results of this one? Okay, here May is the preferred one for the folks online, and September 2nd and January is the last one. January could be problematic from a weather perspective as well. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. As we mentioned, both Encura and the FDP previously have held meetings in geographic areas outside the DC area. And so one of the options we're looking at is rotating locations, especially if the January meeting ends up being problematic from a travel perspective, looking at West Coast or Florida. So from this one, we're trying to get a feeling from folks online if you feel that meetings should be held outside the DC area on some sort of a rotating basis. So if we could have this poll. Okay, any feedback from this one? Okay, so yes is maybe a third more than the no's. So that's interesting. We'll definitely take that into consideration. Next slide, please. Looking ahead to the September meeting, if the committee does decide to do an in-person meeting in September in DC, and again, considering that we meet any CDC pandemic guidelines with any variants that are out and about at that time, would you plan to attend? And again, this takes into consideration that you're probably in a new budget period if July is your fiscal year. So you probably have some good ideas on travel. So if we could bring up this poll, that would be great. Give this a minute for results.
As we're waiting for the results on this, I just want to bring up some of the questions in the Q&A. We've got, looks like five related questions or comments in the Q&A wondering about federal participation if we move meetings outside of DC.
So while we're waiting for the results, and Miriam, if you can help us out, but I do know that some of our federal friends are have commented that if they did a virtual presentation, maybe one that was pre-recorded, that might be one way of contributing. in addition, we would need to consider, as the question indicates, of who might be able to travel from federal agencies, whether the travel budget would be available to attend meetings outside the DC area.
So actually, that's part of all of the questions. That is one of the questions is asking just that. We will definitely consider that as well. One of the things that we have heard is that, especially for like the agency updates, that would be something that perhaps the feds would like to continue doing virtually. So it's definitely something that we're keeping in mind as these decisions are looked at. The other thing I want to add, there was we did get a faculty volunteer. So thank you so much. I already responded, and we will definitely follow up with you and provide you all of the information so that you can join our meeting.
All right, there was also one more question in here that says, with concerns about September and January impacting faculty participation, why not consider shifting the months we meet?
That's a great question. The tradition has been January, May, and September. So why couldn't we shift a few weeks, say the September meeting into August? Those are all great questions. I think the committee will consider in recommending to the executive committee. Good point. Maybe quickly, here's the result of the in-person. It looks like the yeses, almost half would be able to attend, and about a third no's, a fifth no's, and then some folks probably waiting on budget constraints to see if they could attend. Are there other questions, David?
That looks to be it for now.
Okay, last slide, please. Miriam and I would like to encourage folks to provide any feedback. We've asked for a FDP ERA email address to help in the communications. We're hoping that can be rfm@thefdp.org, but we'll see how that one goes. But thank you for your attention, and turn it back over to David.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let me stop sharing here. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was a lot of great information. I hope everyone attending can see a lot of the good work that we're doing and where we're headed for the future of the FDP. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Michelle and Alex to close out the meeting.
David, I'm sorry, it's Miriam. We have 2 additional questions. I don't know if you want us to take them.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Let's take them right now.
Okay, so one is, why can't virtual attendance be an option to all of the meetings? The virtual meetings appear to have more attendance than the in-person meetings. I think that's something that we are looking at, not necessarily have the in-person and virtual at the same time, but perhaps have in-person certain days and virtual others. But nothing is off the table at this moment. That's what part of our working group is considering, all of these. And the other one is just more of a comment. Please coordinate with GWER meeting dates in February, June, and October. That's an excellent point. We also have to look at the COGR meeting dates if we're going to change our months and meeting dates. But thank you for the comment. Thank you. That's all, Matt. Thanks, David.
Okay. All right. Now over to Alex and Michelle.
Okay. Well, I'll start, Michelle. First, I just want to thank all of the attendees for everybody here today, sticking it out to us till the very end. And then just in general, I'm always so amazed at the level of participation and really pleased with the turnout. I think the sessions were amazing. And that leads me to thanking all of our presenters, as well as all of the committee members. I mean, I sat in on all of the different sessions, and it just blows me away. The talent and the activity and the effort people are putting in and using their knowledge and expertise to make FDP what it is today. So thank you so much for that. I'm grateful for you. And we hope to even involve more of you. Again, we're always looking for volunteers. And then I'd also like to thank Sarah, as from her first meeting, did an amazing job. Very impressive. We're so happy to see your face every time, almost every time, in opening up and closing our sessions. You did a really great job for her first. We really threw you into the fire, and Michelle's giving a big smile because I know you totally agree with me, right? And then David, I'm really sad. This is your last meeting. And I think about like 15 years, that's almost like 50 meetings that David has arranged. And when we talk about arranging, we're talking about everything. It's the program, those strong programs we've had for 15 years. He's had to lead the, getting us all, herding cats to make sure that we have a strong program. Very patient with us, and making sure the facilities are run. I can't tell you how many times, idiot IT person, I can't get my laptop to work. The projector's not working. I forgot my flash drive. I mean, I'm not kidding. These are the sorts of things that David had to deal with while he was running a meeting of 400 people. So David, I'm going to really miss you. We're going to, as Michelle said earlier, we're going to have something for you so we can, maybe it'll be a roast, maybe not, I don't know. But that's about all I had to say. I just wanted to thank David and Moises, of course. I don't want to forget. You've done an amazing job with our behind the scenes tech and helping when there's all these glitches. So I think this meeting went amazing, and it's all thanks to you three. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Alex. I echo everything you just said. I am so thrilled with the work and the quality of this particular meeting. It's just been a fascinating set of conversations, especially for those of us who are as impassioned about research as this whole group is. It's great that we can bring our peers together to have conversations like the ones that we have been having. I hope that people know who are not actually presenting how much work goes into providing good, high quality technical information, as well as trying to bring as much transparency to how the organization works as we possibly can. That's of course the whole purpose of today's last session, is just to make sure that everybody understands what is happening and how you could be a part of things. If you're not already deeply engaged with the FDP, here's yet another call for your participation. Please do not be shy about letting any one of us know, whether it's the chair of a committee or it's Alex and myself. We're really interested in hearing from you and learning about your feedback and knowing how we can help connect you better to the things that you are really passionate about. I want to give one more acknowledgement, and that's to Susan Sloan, who's the executive director of GWIR, the Government University Industry Research Roundtable of the National Academies. They are our convening organization of FDP. We greatly value the work that we do with GWIR. Alex and I are actually sitting on the GWIR Council to represent FDP and really try to make sure that the academies knows the fine work that we're doing and continues to leverage GWIR as an arm that implements some of the things that they think are important around the research enterprise. And of course, like Alex, I really want to give a special and warm thank you to David Wright for his dedication and incredible service to this organization. And really, most importantly, to the community of all of us. He's just a sort of stalwart character who's there supporting us and guiding us, and doing so in a very laid back and low key way, but never think that that means that he's not passionate about everything that we do. I can't really quite imagine how the FDP without you, David, but I guess that's where we are and we're going to figure it out. And like Alex said, there will be an opportunity to celebrate all of the fine work that David has done for the organization in the very near future.
Well, thank you everybody for all the kind words. It's been a great run for the past 15 years. I've met some really great people and enjoyed working with them. In thinking back, the number of people that I've been able to work with over these past 15 years, and before that, I've been involved with the FDP for 30 years, because I started back when I was at Emory University, and then I went to UTMB and then the NIH, and I was always working with the FDP during all that. And I was actually a co-chair of the ERA committee at one point in time. So there's so many people that I can think of that I've worked with that have been such a great influence on me during this time. And I really appreciate it. And I know the organization's going to move forward, and it's going to be better than ever.
Well said. Well, with that, we call our meeting to a close, and we are really looking forward to seeing everybody in a virtual format in May, and very excited to be thinking about coming back together in person shortly thereafter in September. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon again.